Okay, so this is going to be our chapters 3 and 4 review of Great Expectations. These were a homework assignment back in December. Anyways, just a quick recap of those. We're going to start with chapter 3, which is page 15 for anyone who wants to look on there. Chapter 3 is ultimately when Pip is going to take the whittles or food and the file to the prisoner, so he has set out to do that. Now it opens with describing the scene, and we see mist. When we see mist in this novel, something is going to happen. We know that there's going to be some type of action. It's probably going to be a darker point in the novel. So when Pip sets out, we see mist, and we know that there is going to be something of importance to occur. So Pip sets out to go find his convict, or our convict, what we like to call him. He sets out to find him, and ultimately he feels this overpowering sensation of guilt. Guilt for stealing from his family. Now, guilt is a common feeling in everyone, but Pip is fairly young to be feeling this kind of guilt, and we see throughout the entirety of the novel guilt eating at Pip, and it's often a motivating force for him. It doesn't change much, but it is a motivating force, and it's usually what many of his thoughts are filled about. Chapters 3 and 4 specifically, we see a lot of guilt. But the beginning of the novel is just setting the scene and telling us he's filled with guilt for what he has done. However, he is still going through with it because he's terrified to not go through with it. He runs upon a convict to give the food and whittles to, and when he taps him, he turns around and realizes it is not his convict. So naturally, who does Pip suspect that this is? He suspects that it is the young man that his convict threatened him of. He does feel bad for this convict as well because of the way he looks. He looks rough. He has a bruised face, which is important. Anyways, he quickly runs off simply because he's afraid. He finally runs up on his convict, and he tells him that he saw the young man. The other convict and our convict is pretty confused, and ultimately I think forgets his threat, but then it's like, wait, hold up, what did he look like? And when Pip explains the bruised face, he immediately erupts. It brings about some type of emotion in him. Pip is being nice to him, and honestly the convict is being fairly fine with Pip too, because he's done what Pip wanted him to do. But when he brings up this convict with the bruised face, he erupts, and he immediately starts trying to file off his iron, which is on his leg, which is going to be kind of like a shackle. But he's trying to file it off, and naturally Pip takes this moment to escape, because it went from a decent, we say decent lightly, but it went from a decent interaction to terrifying because of the reaction that our convict gave to find out there was another convict ultimately out there that had some distinct features that our convict recognized. So yeah, Pip left, and that is it in chapter 3. Chapter 3 is fairly short. Let's move on to chapter 4. So in chapter 4, we get full into Christmas mode, which, is why we started this when we did before December, to get into the Christmas spirit with Great Expectations. But chapter 4 is filled with what's supposed to be Christmas festivities. At Christmas, you're supposed to be feeling lighthearted, family-oriented, happy. Pip's feeling everything but this. The only thing running through his mind, the guilt and the horrors of his family finding out what he has done. Filled with guilt, more just thinking about what he has done, when they're going to notice, and ultimately they're just getting ready for Christmas dinner in this chapter, and we meet two important characters. We meet Uncle Pumblechook. Please don't ask me who Uncle Pumblechook is. Watch this video. Uncle Pumblechook, he is technically not Pip's uncle. He is Mr. Joe's uncle, but he takes Mrs. Joe and Pip into his stride. Uncle Pumblechook is arrogant. He is a merchant. He thinks he knows everything. He's going to be rather annoying, and he's really going to get on Pip's nerves ultimately as well. But Uncle Pumblechook is just that arrogant, know-it-all person in this novel. Then we also meet Mr. Wopsley, and he's just a member of the church, kind of just someone who's always around, a family friend, we would say. But they are both going to come over for Christmas, and we've talked about society standards at the time, and how you show your social status and how you show your wealth is through physical representations. And honestly, at this point, Mrs. Joe is trying to show off for these two in an abundance of ways. Obviously they know their social class because they are familial and family friends, but she's still trying to put together a very nice meal and a very nice get together for them. Not only is Mrs. Joe trying to show off, but we will get to Uncle Pumblechook showing off as well. The entire time that they are going through with this dinner, the conversation continuously gets pointed at Pip, and it doesn't get pointed to him in a lighthearted way. It's all like degrading things. Not terrible, but it's all just kind of like picky comments aimed towards children and directly aimed towards Pip because he's the only child there. During dinner, Mrs. Joe wants to show off their alcohol and decides she wants to give Uncle Pumblechook some brandy. Now, what's the problem with this? Remember, Pip took the brandy to our convict. So it's no longer brandy in the bottle, it is tar water. So this is embarrassing for Mrs. Joe. She has no clue how it became tar water, but Uncle Pumblechook takes a drink of it and immediately realizes, like, this is not brandy. So here's the first time that Pip almost gets caught. However, somehow he gets out of it. By the end of this chapter, Mrs. Joe is trying to kind of make up for some of the problems that has occurred, and she decides to go get the pork pie for the guests and them to eat and to try. Well, what's the problem with this? Yeah, that's gone too. It's gone. Pip is so overwhelmed by this that, because he knows he's going to be found out at this point, he decides, I'm going to run. I'm going to make a run for it. He goes to dart at the door, and boom, there are soldiers waiting at the door. And we're left on a cliffhanger after this chapter. Now, why are the soldiers there? We don't know yet. But naturally, that guilt that is eating at Pip is going to make Pip think they are there for him. Okay, there's chapters 3 and 4.